This is NDTV and you are watching NDTV Prime.
Hey, 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 hey.
Hello and welcome to the Rising Stars of Comedy. I'm Akriti Tyagi. Unapologetic, unafraid, clever and very funny. That's why our guest for today is going to storm her way all the way to the top, roadblocks notwithstanding. She speaks about things that people are probably even too scared to think about. In her own words, I've realized that the best way to get people to listen is through comedy. And if you still harbor ignorance, if you still have the stigma, then the joke is on you. A trainer, a writer, a researcher, a comedian, she works with people with disabilities and is truly an inspiration. Please welcome the charming Nidhi Goyal.
Hi everyone, good evening. I'm Nidhi Goyal and I'm blind. Oh my god. So I'm blind and so is love, you know. Get over it. Once I was walking into a wedding with my mom and there was this lovely auntie who came up to her and she said, she's your daughter? And my mom was like, yeah, she's my daughter. She has some problem? So, people are very polite. They don't ask you if you're disabled. They say, do you have a problem? I say, no, do you?
Thank you so much for being a part of the show, Nidhi.
Hi, Akriti. Thank you for inviting me.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much for sparing time for us. So, I really want to understand something. You started, as you mentioned in an article, that, you started losing eyesight when you were about 15 years old.
Right.
It's obviously an age where most teenagers are looking forward to life, to love, to, basically growing into young adults. And to have to go through a trauma such as this, and
Right.
yet you are this positive, balanced and happy person. Tell us the secret behind this.
The secret is that there are 16 years between when I was 15 and now. So, basically when I started losing sight, right, Akriti, obviously I was also confused. Teenage already is a very confusing period of life.
Correct.
And then suddenly this happened, and then I was diagnosed with an eye condition, which would be progressive degenerative, which means that I didn't lose my sight all of a sudden. It was going to happen over a period of time.
Okay.
And so the biggest trauma I think at that point was like, what do I do in life next career-wise? Because I wanted to be a portrait painter.
Okay.
So I was painting since I was 4. I was dancing since I was 3.
Oh, wow.
So multiple things like that.
Yeah.
So, and suddenly I was like, okay, now painting's not going to be for me. What will I do next? So I think that was the biggest trauma, and the love and the life and the follow-ups and the what all explorations happened only once I entered college, and I was like, yeah, everyone's doing that, and what do I do now? And I think what helped me be positive was literally, every building is made on like 4 pillars.
Correct.
And I have my 4 personal pillars in life. My family, so my parents, my sister and my brother.
Okay.
And I'm the youngest, so you can just imagine. But it's also that my brother is visually impaired, and by the time I was diagnosed, he was successful in life. He was doing things very well. So most of the times when you acquire a disability,
Correct.
the first thing that hits you is that life maybe is over.
Yeah.
And for me, there was a living example and a living family that was so positive, that said life is of course not over.
Yeah.
So giving up was never an option for me, and I think removing that option.
Yeah.
So I knew that there's a tunnel, it's a dark tunnel, but I knew with confidence that there is a light at the end. I only have to crawl through this.
Sure.
So I think that really, and sometimes as a teenager I told them, I'm like, you guys as a family are a puke-inducingly positive family, because I want a crib. I'm 15, I want a crib, and there's no space to crib. But yeah, I think that's the secret behind evolving into a positive person.
Of course. As I mentioned, teenage years, the years where we literally have we start developing crushes, we have those stolen glances, things basically any teenager takes for granted.
Right.
Yet you had to navigate through life and develop your own senses and, you know, still continue to live as healthily as you'd been. What is it that, you know, changed around that time, and, you know, do you feel that you missed out?
So, you know, when you say all teenagers, I was amongst those teenagers who had crushes, who looked forward to college and wanted to be there on rose days and things like that. For the record, I never got any rose. But, you know, every year you dress up and go, it's like, hey, it's the rose day.
Yeah.
So, for example, I had a crush on a guy in college and my friends knew about it.
Okay.
And so, you know, when you have these stolen glances or you deliberately try and bump into them and say, oh, hi, you're here. So, of course, I couldn't do that. So some of my friends, to really have that element of surprise, they wouldn't tell me and they'd be like, this staircase is really crowded, let's go via that.
Okay.
I'd be very puzzled saying, our class is here. Why are we going there? And then they would just take me through the other route and be like, hey, isn't this your friend from that place? And obviously the person is forced to acknowledge and I'm forced to acknowledge. And the surprise in my face is genuine.
Yeah.
So, you know, also these are some of the sweet things that my friends did for me.
So sweet. On a lighter note, you mention your love, undying, unrequited love for Abhishek Bachchan.
I knew this is going to come. Oh my God. Second time on camera. Embarrassing.
Hey, let's hope Abhishek Bachchan looks at this show.
I hope Aishwarya doesn't.
Yeah.
So my brother and I jokingly sometimes say, he was. I tell him it's all your fault. So he's like, what? I'm like, you were Aishwarya's fan. If you had her, I would have had Abhishek free for myself. No, but the thing is, I entered into celebrity crushes very, very early on in life.
Okay.
So I think I went from Shah Rukh Khan to Rahul Dravid to Hrithik, Abhishek. Yeah, but Abhishek Bachchan, of course, was the longest, and he was like in this troublesome teenage years. So I think that remains with me yeah. And also because I had like this, my college was 5 minutes from the bungalow, the Bachchan bungalow. So I think that access and that fun, and so yeah. If I had to still choose one, I would go back to Rahul Dravid maybe.
Okay. Hey guys, are you listening?
Any of you.
We'll take it.
Oh God.
I read that you'd made a profile on Shaadi.com. I have to hear some encounters.
Secrets out. So I was working, I was authoring a website called sexualityanddisability.org.
Correct.
For an organization where I still work.
Okay.
And so for that, we had to also talk about marriage.
Okay.
And then I said, how can I talk about marriage without like registering? How can I say, acha, these are the portals that are available without registering on them?
Correct.
So I registered.
Okay.
And I think those were the most hilarious 6 months of my life.
One uncle called me, said, Beta, we're very impressed with your education, your profile, your work. It sounds fascinating. I would love you to meet my son. I said, wow, yeah, like super uncle, yeah. Direct meet my son and all that. I said, okay, great. I said, uncle, wait. You know, in my profile, I've written I'm blind. I hope you've read it. What? What, beta? What? I said, uncle, I can't see. You know, I'm visually impaired. So I hope you've read it. Okay. I said, uncle, but you've read it or no? Okay. Tuck. That's the day I realized that disability is contagious. I told him I'm visually impaired. He became speech impaired.
And then somebody else actually called me up who was another disabled guy who had some, I think he had a limb impairment, didn't have an arm or something like that. So he thought, of course, you know, I don't have an arm, she doesn't have an eye, she doesn't have eyes, let's call her. And then suddenly he was like, so what are your thoughts about intimacy? And I'm like, sorry? And then he said, no, because you're a writer, right? So you'll have very interesting thoughts about intimacy. So I told him, listen, I'm not here to discuss like porn, erotica stories with you. But he was like, okay, forget it. Tell me, what are your hobbies? And for something I said, I'm a foodie. And he said, oh, that's very visible from your photograph.
Thank you so much.
And I'm like, wow, what's the kind of privilege
Yeah.
that you take, that you can sort of comment on someone's body type and body image in the first phone call.
Correct.
But there have also been instances which I quote in my stand-up comedy where uncles have called me and I've said, you know, by the time I was trained, so the first thing I would say is, "Hi, thank you, but have you seen I'm blind?" And they would stutter and mutter and pause and ask what and say, "Pardon me," and stuff. And then at the end, they would just do an abrupt disconnection of phone. And so I thought of it for a long time, and I realized that disability is contagious, because when I say I'm visually impaired, they become speech impaired. So it's really that thought that, you know, when I analyzed it that way,
Yeah.
is when it stopped hurting.
Yeah.
It didn't hurt me anyway, because it was a trial thing that I had done.
Correct.
But I think, yeah, so I think it's more of the perspective that I developed, that, oh, why are they doing this? Because it's contagious and they've become disabled too. So
What a beautiful thought.
I was in US very recently for work, and at the United Nations, the security guard turned around and said, "Sorry, you're disabled, but you don't look disabled." And that's the thing that I face in India all the time. So I had a huge laugh in US, because I was like, this is not only India, it's everywhere that I get to hear this, that, "Oh, you don't look blind." And I always wonder what blind people are supposed to look like, with little horns on their head or something like that. But